Hello, and welcome to the Herald's Horn. On this episode, we're discussing quite a few different things, but we are especially talking about Wizards of the Coast withdrawing support from the VML. There's a couple of event announcements here and there to go over, and of course, it's Aetherdrift week. Aetherdrift is well underway, so we talked for quite a while about Aetherdrift. After the break, I am joined by the one and only EK, editor extraordinaire, real behind-the-scenes guy who does way more than you would ever believe. But we are here today to talk with him about how to make better, more interesting commander decks, at least from his perspective. It's a great interview. You're gonna love it. Speaking of loving it, hey, Bald Rald Jerry, our first chair patron, thank you so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting the show, the best way to do so is, of course, over on Patreon. We have several different levels, but all of them get you a sticker in the mail, all of them get you our bonus content, and all of them get you into our Discord. Of course, if you want shouted out, there's a tier for that, all that kind of fun stuff. You can find all that information in the description. While I'm plugging things, I also wanted to take the chance to tell you once again about the Herald's Horn Substack. It's something new. I'm trying out a little Herald's Horn newsletter with some of the same content that you would find here on the Horn, news, that kind of stuff, but also guest content from other people, some opinion pieces from me here and there, that kind of stuff. If that sounds interesting to you, you can also find that in the podcast description. Without any further ado, let's get into the episode. Hello, it's time for the Herald's Horn, part of the One Shot Network. My name is Cal Jones, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dan. Say hello, Dan.
What's up, everybody? When you said Herald's Horn, I was thinking about mimicking a little like horn thing, and I was like, no, it's going to look bad on camera. I'm going to not do it.
It's going to look bad on camera, and there's like already multiple horn motifs throughout.
That's what I was going to do.
You're current for the listeners at home, or perhaps even the watchers. You're wearing an perhaps a slightly embarrassing sweatshirt today. Dockside, Mr. Unbannable. He did not say Mr. Unbannable for, I suppose, the entirety of his lifetime.
Is that why I should be embarrassed? Or because he did get banned?
No, you should be embarrassed because he got banned.
Oh, okay. Not because he didn't say that. Okay. Because I'll have you know, in the manga, he actually did say that.
Let's run the theme song. And welcome back. As always, we are going to jump directly into the news. No surprise to anyone. The biggest news that went on this last week was the VML recently announced that they were denied further Wizards of the Coast funding and invites. Top level, what was the VML? I've seen a lot of people around the internet asking that question. In short, the VML was a tournament series for people of marginalized genders, focusing on helping people get into the competitive Magic scene for those who may not feel comfortable doing so otherwise. They had several different seasons where people could compete within them. And then the winners of these different seasons, or the top competitors in these different seasons, were given the likes of 8 regional championships invites. I believe they averaged about 8 regional championship invites per season given out. And then at the end of the year, they invited these top performers back to the VML championship. And at this last annual championship, there were two Pro Tour invites on the line. I can never say the word Pro Tour to save my life when I'm in the middle of saying things. I don't know what's up with that Pro Tour.
Scientists say it's the hardest word to say.
I saw online from different people involved. Wizards of the Coast cut financial support to them. This was a team of people that were putting these events on through the help of Wizards of the Coast financial support, and also there had been some fundraising for it in the past. And they said they were trying to, they had received words of Wizards of the Coast's assistance financially. They had received word that was going away, but they had not heard until extremely recently that they were also planning on rescinding the invites. And that was kind of the nail in the coffin. Without the invites and without the monetary support, both, there wasn't just much for them to be able to do anymore. It's pretty sad. I think, like, I've seen multiple people, like, saying this now, and I definitely agree, which is that, especially where we are today, especially considering what yesterday was, this all kind of sucks. It's no secret that competitive Magic spaces for a very long time have been very white male, kind of a guys club institution, so to speak. Especially given the fact that Magic is an extremely expensive hobby. Getting to play Magic at a high level takes a lot of money. You got to buy the cards or have the connections to borrow cards. You have to travel to these events. You have to be able to get off time to prepare at high levels for these events. You have to be able to get time off a job to be able to attend these events, especially if you want to take part of a serious testing team. A lot of that involves like going there a week ahead of time and spending time staying there and getting together with people in person. All of that is expensive monetarily, and all of that is also expensive relationally. You have to be able to get an in with a lot of these people over time. And I think VML was extremely important to breaking down some of those barriers for people who would have been excluded, or not even purposely excluded, but just accidentally excluded from these spaces in the past. And VML was also instrumental in the creation of the Sanctum for All professional team, which very specifically worked on a lot of the same principles and ethoses, brought in a lot of these people from the outside who might not have gotten access to a team outside of this space, and gotten those people a lot of help. And this team has resulted in plenty of top-level success, including Pro Tour tops 8s from the likes of Jason Yee, who credited VML for its start of success in the space directly when interviewed about it a couple months ago. So it's extremely frustrating for me to see this go away. I know a lot of people are, a lot of people could say they're concerned trolling about it online, not being like, oh, I don't get it. They had 300 subscribers on YouTube. It wasn't about making content. It was about running relatively high demand, relatively high competitive level tournaments online that specifically welcomed and were specifically for people who might not be able to break through otherwise, not because of skill, but just because of the resources and related involved. And we could say all day long, sure, maybe, there's just such a need to make budget cuts that they had to cut out the money going to this from the WotC angle, whatever. They would have been able to make it happen, I think, without the financial thing of WotC. There's enough people out there who enjoy them. They have successfully run fundraisers in the past. They were talking about running a fundraiser for this anyways. The invites, man, the invites feel so free. You can go, a store in the middle of... Exactly. A store in the middle of nowhere, Colorado, can run a 2-slaughter for 8 people on a weekend when no one's going to show up very purposefully, and get 2 buds sent out to the regional championship, right? Them having 8 invites to give out over one of their seasons, and 2 Pro Tour invites a year, that seems like the absolute bare minimum that Wizards of the Coast could give to one of the few organizations that I think is doing a very good job of living out the values and enabling the values that Wizards of the Coast claims to hold.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the really unfortunate part about all of this is, like, obviously, like, we're recording this on January 21st, and it is obviously, like, the optics of doing this now are obviously terrible. I know this is a decision that has been set in stone for more than a few weeks, I think. This is not, like, breaking news in terms of the people who are actually breaking it to us. But yeah, it's a very unfortunate loss for the community, and it's something that I hope sparks more people to try to get something like this put together. But I can understand people feeling the frustration of, like, what's the point of doing it if, like, we're, like, gonna get just peanuts from WotC pretty much. And I certainly don't want to speculate on, like, what budget cuts this, like, makes up for or anything like that, because I don't think that there's a good answer or a satisfying one. It's just really unfortunate on all fronts. And yeah, like you said, like, it's one of those things where companies love to claim their allyship, but when it comes to, like, actually doing something for the community, it can come up short. And yeah, it feels like this is definitely one of those situations where we have come up short of fulfilling our claims.
And I at the expense of being just, like, I think as pessimistic as possible. I mean, at the end of the day, this very well may boil down to these are the kind of things that Hasbro has to specifically cut out of what they are actively supporting if they want to get that Trump tax cut, not Trump tax cut, those Trump tariff carve outs or whatever. These are the type of things that the current administration may be looking at, which sucks. And I don't think it's a great reason for this to happen in the first place, right?
No, again, if we're talking about allyship, allyship
exactly.
means standing up for those things in the face of losing a little bit more money from taxes or whatever it is.
Exactly. Yeah,
pretty disheartening news.
Very disheartening news, and additionally disheartening, at least at the, standard disclaimer, kind of like, not standard disclaimer, but, at the time of we are recording this, it's 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, January 21st. There has not actually been a statement from Wizards of the Coast about it, unless I missed Blake Rasmussen saying something in the final 30 minutes of the weekly MTG stream today that I was not able to watch all of before I hopped into an interview for the show that you'll hear later. Classic. But as far as I know, Wizards of the Coast has still not actually said anything official about it. What we have is the actual VML announcement, which I will take the time to read out here really quickly. We are sad to announce that we have been told by Wizards that they will no longer support the VML program with either funding or invites to organize play events. Without this support, especially the invites, it is impossible for the league to continue, and there will be no more VML seasons going forward. Over the past 5 years, we've radically changed competitive Magic for the better. When we started the program with 26 players back in Season 1, we never thought that we would end up having served hundreds of competitors and with over 1,000 people in our community. We have sent cohorts of people to the set championships, regional championships, and Pro Tour. As a result of our program, representation of people of marginalized genders at the highest levels of play has multiplied from a handful at each event to over 20 who will play at Pro Tour Chicago. Several of our team members and players have gone on to be hired to work at Wizards. We are also proud of the change we have created in the broader sense. The Magic community is a much more diverse, vibrant, and inclusive place than it was 5 years ago. The gender balance at in-person events has improved dramatically, and the overall image of the game has changed for the better. We don't have claim to have caused all of that, but we are happy knowing our efforts have played a part. We want to thank all the organizations who have worked with us and supported the cause: Good Luck High Five, Lodestone Coffee, NRG, Team Arclight, MTG Melee, Birds of Paradise, and the many wonderful creators, personalities, and players who have contributed. To anyone who has been a part of the team here, you have been brilliant, and without your passion and dedication, we would not have made it this far. Every single one of you has gone above and beyond, giving your time and effort generously to the program, and you should be extremely proud of yourselves. Finally, to our awesome community, we're sorry that we couldn't keep this project going. We know how much the VML has meant to you. Thank you so much to every single person who has competed, written articles, made graphs, cheered their friends, and otherwise been a part of this movement. The VML community will always be a safe space and home for you and for everyone of marginalized gender in this game. Sad times, especially, combine that with the announcement that Birds of Paradise was told, and not too far away memory, which if I recall correctly, we talked about it on the show. Birds of Paradise, is not going to have their inclusive safe space, place to play Magic the Gathering, host events, that kind of stuff, which is something they've been given by Wizards of the past at MagicCons. That's not a space that's going to exist anymore moving forward either, at least not for MagicCon Chicago, but the vibe was it will not happen again for space constraints. Got to fit another vendor in there or something. It's just not a great time, which is, as if the allyship of Hasbro and WotC, or supposed allyship, is going to dry up, then it stands for other people to step up instead. Spring Flourishes events bring unique Secret Lair promos from April 25th to May 25th. Participating WPN stores will be able to run special draft events that Wizards say will vary from store to store, but all promise exciting limited gameplay for a, quote, limited time. There's not very much specifics. I have a feeling that most WPN stores will kind of be able to set this up how they want, or maybe there will be several different options with sets and whatnot, and maybe some fun little funky rules or whatever. That's kind of how these events kind of seem to go. The big news here: participants in each event will receive a random promo, which are universe within versions of the 7 cards from the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves Secret Lair drop from a couple months ago. You can only get one card per event, but you can attend multiple events. Hopefully you can collect all 7. All 6 of like the characters from the movie have been reskinned into Magic, generic Magic characters with new names and that kind of stuff. And there's also Thumberchod or whatever the massive fat dragon is. Yeah, something like that. Thumberchowd. Still retains its name, but they gave it some new art. So that's kind of fun and neat, and a different, interesting way for Wizards of the Coast to get universe within versions of mechanically unique secret lairs into the hands of players. Always a hot topic, especially as of recently. So it's interesting to see them experimenting with different things in addition to the already announced, we're going to sell them at local game stores that we talked about last week.
Yeah, I suppose that this adds like a proper dichotomy of like being able to compete for your universes within cards, or simply being able to buy them, and adding a little bit more variety in how people can get the cards into players' hands, so to speak. It seems, I don't know, it seems like the fact that they're randomized and you don't know which one you're going to get, I would be upset as spaghetti, I think, as a player. Especially if you're really trying to get all of them. You like, oh, this is my 3rd Thumberchowd in a row. Well, not that one. I suppose you'd be happy to get the one that's the most expensive, but yeah. I don't know. If you get like one of the ones that's worth $1 3 times in a row, I would just...
Yeah, and it's like not even one you're interested in playing in a commander deck or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like, yeah, I think that's kind of always been the way of FNM promos and related. It's just kind of like, oh, this stinks. Oh, brother.
I suppose technically stores could like open up whatever pack it's in and be like, everyone knows what they're playing for tonight or something like that. But I don't know if that'll be against like WPN
everyone
rules or
gets
something.
a Thumberchod or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a neat little change, a neat little nice thing. I am always a fan of this kind of card distribution, just cool versions of cards as promos that you can get from your local game store by participating in an event, being in your local space, playing with people that are local to you. I think the more that Wizards can actively incentivize those kind of things, the more I am a happy guy, because I think those are the type of things that incentivize the healthiest relationship with Magic, the healthiest way of playing Magic, which is just hanging out with the pals or perhaps meeting people.
I think you're right on with that. It's definitely the worst way to interact with this hobby or anyone is to simply sit inside your own office or bedroom and stare at your computer screen, playing Arena and checking prices on TCG Player and seeing what people have to say on Twitter or whatever. Glad to see them incentivizing people to get out to their local game stores, especially in an era where it is so easy to solely interact with this game through digital means.
Exactly. I say that, and I don't remember the last time I left my house to play Magic the Gathering. Uh-oh.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah, Dan has another Vintage Cube draft to fire up, let me tell you.
I need my digital assets.
But no, I think this is something I'm more interested in them doing to get these cards into people's hands than the like resell model. Local game stores being able to get their hands on Subway. We still don't exactly know how, but getting their hands on mechanically unique cards through Wizards of the Coast to like sell in their stores. Mm-hmm. I'm more enthused about this kind of model. A cool event that you can go and be at your local game store, and as a thanks for supporting the local game store, Wizards of the Coast gives you a cool card. That's a little more my vein. I'm a big fan of the FNM promo, big fan of the set championship promo, game day promo, back when game day was a thing.
Oh, I miss those open house promos. You remember them?
Open house promos, yep. Yeah. I think those are called like basically like Commander Weekend promos or something like that now. Yeah. Is an event they still technically do from time to time. But love keeping up with these events. And hey, if you are interested in getting your hands on these events, track down your local WPN store, or hopefully that's one you already get to consistently attend and go to. And from April 25th to May 25th, you should be able to get yourself some of these kind of promos. My reading of the situation was a little more that they are like participatory promo rather than like winner promo. So there might be a lot of them out there, hopefully. So we'll see what happens with them.
Yeah, remains to be seen, I suppose. And to note, as we did last week, that this is going to be a harder thing to come by if you're outside of the United States, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that's kind of the given with all of the WPN support, Wizards Play Network support. WPN stores are harder and harder to find the farther you get away from a major United States metropolis. Yeah. So pour it out for everyone else. But I also hope that they are, I also hope they are plentiful enough such that, the aftermarket price of these cards becomes like $2 or something like that.
That would be the hope. Yeah, if it's a participatory thing rather than a championship thing, that would be a really big boon in that favor, which would be, I think, a more ideal solution to this, because I don't know exactly what the solution is to getting them out to places with fewer WPN stores, but that would be helpful, certainly.
Definitely. Maybe they should just airdrop them.
I think so, yeah. We've played Fortnite, of course.
Yeah, Wizards of the Coast should fly the battle bus over random locales and just airdrop these cards onto the ground. Mm-hmm. And whoever nabs them can have them. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the perfect solution.
I said I didn't know what it was, but we came up with it really quickly.
Yeah, and how expensive could that be? What's it? A couple bucks? How expensive could
running
it be
the battle bus? I would assume is like more fuel efficient than like Air Force One.
I would imagine so. Like the battle bus, it's so light, it's so crappy. Mm-hmm. How much fuel can it take to run that thing?
And correct me if I'm wrong. Does it not have parachutes on it as well to help it stay aloft?
It does. It has big old parachutes. Yeah. That lift will really, keep it in the air long term enough, I think, to get the job done.
All right, I'm going to get on the phone with John, Wizards of the Coast.
Excellent. I'm glad that we solved this problem for everyone on this episode. We got to think about it for a week. We came back. We had the solution.
Yep.
Well, that's about all we've got for the news this week, so it is time for us to move on to the Product Watch.
Product Watch! I've never considered how awkward it is for people on YouTube to watch me do that, like wait for you to finish talking and then...
I think it works.
Good, I hope so.
The Product Watch is presented by Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. After all, you need to clear out space for all the new cards you'll be getting from these new sets. Brought to you by the beloved team behind Card Hoarder, Card Conduit does the hard work of getting you the best buy list prices available for your cards. All you have to do is send them one package, taking advantage of your selection of their 3 services. I use the sorted service, which has you collate and enter cards ahead of time in return for the lowest fees. Don't worry, you can just send them a huge box of random unsorted cards too, and they'll figure it out. I have used Card Conduit myself 6 different times to thin my collection, and I've had exclusively great experiences. Use code HORN at checkout, or use the link in the podcast description to get 10% off your fees and help support the show. That's right, listeners, those of you among you who are so eagle-eyed and sharp-eared will hear that the number has gone up. That's right. I sent out another Card Conduit order, that great $1 to $5 range of stuff that I'm not going to go through the rigmarole of selling on my own. Got back a good $50 out of it for not that many cards. It's just another send out a package in the mail, get some money in my pocket. It just works. Welcome to the Product Watch, the part of the show where we talk about all of the Magic the Gathering cards that are coming out soon. And boy, is it a big week for the Product Watch. Mm-hmm. Aetherdrift season is almost here. Earlier today, we kind of had the big debut stream. We've had a drip feed of information about the set over the last couple of weeks and even months, going back to like Vegas preview season, but today is the official start. We're recording this, been going, I'm sure by the time this episode comes out, a ton more cards will be previewed because preview season is now underway. But they showed off some really cool stuff, mainly like they talked about the main mechanics, a lot of the big design pillars, and also some of the world building specifics were all revealed on stream. It's a huge death race across multiple worlds, specifically Avishkar, Amonkhet, and Marganda? That the third one? That's the third one.
I will believe you. I can't remember. I only heard them in the stream once.
Dan!
I know. I watched the stream though.
One thing I gotta say about this set before I say a lot of positive things about it, me personally, I do hate the set symbol. The set symbol is just like it's like a cheesy, weird glyph of like a checkered flag. it just doesn't fit, I feel like, into some of the greater language and history. What?
If we're comparing these to other set symbols, I mean, this looks like a made up car emblem.
Yes. It's kind of gaudy.
Yes, I think gaudy is the perfect word. It's a real first thought, best thought kind of a set symbol. As someone who's like a real set symbol nerd, not a big fan of this one.
But they showed off a lot of cool stuff from the set. It has it's another 10 two-color pair kind of matter set. I think that's been a really interesting thing that's kind of snuck in over the last couple of years without people paying too much attention to it. But a lot of sets sneakily now are successfully like 10 color pair sets, even if it's just for limited. But in a lot of the past times, we would have like a 5 two-color pair set or whatever. But or even going, all the way back in Ravnica, which granted is pretty ancient history now at this point, but having 10 color pair themes was kind of like a big deal. And even it remained kind of a big deal, only remaining for Ravnica sets. But ever since Strixhaven, they did it for Strixhaven, and now more and more we're seeing that. But this is there are 10 factions that each care about a color pair. Each of them are pretty cool, pretty unique. A lot of people are kind of starting to dunk on this set as kind of cheesy and a little over the top and maybe unset-like. But unfortunately, I love Redline. It's a racing movie, a death racing anime movie. I grew up watching a lot of Speed Racer. A lot of this kind of stuff is just kind of my shit.
Yeah, like cars and vehicles and stuff.
Yeah, it's just like, but specifically like a bunch of freaks doing freaky racing, and they're all gonna die. Like I wouldn't care.
Is this a literal death race?
Maybe.
Okay.
Knowing Magic, the answer is probably not. But
I was surprised to hear you say that. That's why I asked.
That is some of the descriptor they gave on stream today is some of like the inspiratory, the vibe. But if it had just been a bunch of people racing cars, then I kind of would have been like, whatever. But there's the Avishkar faction racing super slick neo-futurist stuff. There's a whole bunch of bugs racing bugs. There's
like the organic cars. It's pretty cool.
And there's like the Amonkhet faction who are out here racing their chariots with their zombie animals pulling them and, all that kind of stuff. This is a lot more flavor and interest to it. So much so that not only is vehicle returning for this set, but mounts is a major creature type in the set. The relatively new technology from kind of, I don't want to say improved vehicles, but I would almost call mounting improved vehicles from Outlaws of Thunder Junction have made a return. A certain subsection of factions have mounts instead of vehicles because they have mounts rather than racing cars. What are your kind of first impressions of this set, Dan? I know you got to watch the stream for a little bit. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about it?
I guess, I don't know. I'm less excited than you are about it, but one thing I am very excited is that cycling is going to be in this set. Cycling is a really fantastic mechanic for limited, and I'm going to be playing any set in limited regardless of how I feel about it otherwise. So very excited to see cycling back. There's a lot of really interesting card design here. We've only really seen just like some signpost uncommons and rares and stuff like that. So obviously I think these are going to be some of the more like more of the enticing two color cards that are coming out of the set, but they represent the color pies really well. They do pretty interesting things. I think it looks like it's going to be a pretty well fleshed out set from just what we've seen so far.
And that's, I think, what really got me from the outside looking in before they started showing things off. I was like, okay, it's a 2-color pair set. It's a racing set. But it has seemed to me since they started showing it off, it seems like they have really done a really good job of building out this world, making some interesting stuff and doing a lot of interesting stuff within that 2-color pairs space, specifically really pushing on the theme. There are, the major mechanic that they showed off that I wanted to talk about for a second is start your engines. If you play a start your engine card, yes, you have to it's an outside the game tracking thing, which I'm a little bit tired of. So I'm a little down on this mechanic. You start your speed at 1 and then you gain a speed every time an opponent if you get to the end of one of your turns, if an opponent has lost life on your turn, you gain a speed. So you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4. 4 is your max speed, and pretty much every Start Your Engines card then has a bonus that you get from achieving a max speed. One that they showed off, which I thought was pretty sick, was a new Hazoret that could not attack or block while being like a 2-mana 6/5 or a 2-mana 5/4 with indestructible and haste.
Yeah,
5/3 with other text on it too, but it could not attack or block unless you were at max speed. So it kind of just sits there and has some kind of effect, but you can't get rumbling in with your 2-mana 5/3 with indestructible and haste until you are at max speed, which granted, it has haste because you could reach max speed off of another card and then cast your Hazoret long after. And then, it's a hasty 5/3. So with indestructible. So that's pretty cool, but it definitely seems a little more of a hopefully constructed level, like standard level, and obviously limited level card, because even if you played a Start Your Engines card on turn 1 and somehow made them lose life, you're not going to have, end of turn 1, you go to speed 2, end of turn 2, you go to speed 3, end of turn 3, you go to speed 4. You're not getting any of these effects until your end step of your third turn, assuming perfect from turn 1. And then on turn 4, you start to get some kind of effect from this, assuming it all goes perfectly. That's definitely a little slow, but more realistically, it'll be like you get it. Maybe you start your engine on turn 2 and you maybe miss going up on that turn. And then the next turn, you can make your opponent lose life. You go up to level 2. The turn after that, maybe you can make them lose life again. You go up to level 3, and then maybe your opponent holds back all their blockers because they don't want you going to top speed or whatever, or you don't have a direct damage spell that turn, and so you can't get to 4, and so that your card might never pay off. It's an interesting mechanic. It's definitely a little more of a slow mechanic, and I don't love that it has the outside tracking.
It requires a pretty competent curve, like you said, to really go off with it, because you could theoretically play a creature on turn 1 that does not have Start Your Engines, but play one on turn 2 that does, and attack with your creature from turn 1 to just expedite that one part from going from level 1 to 2 there. But you're right, it does take a little while, but I do think that this is a much more like palatable and balanced version of, say, like the Initiative, where at least you can't bounce a creature, have it come back in and start your engines. I think that's how it works, right? It doesn't happen from if you have no speed, it starts at 1 when it comes in. So yeah, you can't expedite this process by just blinking the card a bunch of times and then like really overtaking your opponent with some sort of like underworld city effect. So you're definitely correct in that it's a little slow, but I think it's, as far as these mechanics kind of go, it seems like it's definitely like on the more fun and safe end of the spectrum than Broken and Scary.
Definitely agree.
And you have to admit that the Start Your Engines token is gorgeous.
Yes, the Start Your Engine token is very cool. I do like what they did with it. I'll put it up here on the screen so everyone can see. And there's also some really cool treats in this for maybe some of the older heads. Chrome Mox special guest is automatically just a huge reprint in the special guest. Oh my gosh,
what gorgeous art on there too. It's Princess Hinder, is that it?
That does seem to be the case, yes. And they also have like a cool special guest, awesome art, Lord of the Undead. You can never reprint Lord of the Undead enough for the zombie heads out there. And then they are finishing. They're making a cycle of 2-color Gear Hulks. We've already said a lot of really good stuff about the Selesnya one that they showed off in the past, but they also showed off a Dimir one and a Gruul one. Just all really sick, really cool. Happy about that. And they also announced that they would finish the Verge cycle in this set. So those are all like Sunbillow Verge, just as an example. It's a new one that they spoiled from here. It taps for a white, or if you control a mountain or a plains, it can tap for a red. So they're completing that cycle. exciting times. Always love it when they very quickly finish a cool cycle.
Yeah, just back to back. That feels so good because we've still got several unfulfilled cycles of lands that have gone like more than a decade without getting their completion. So I'm really glad that we're in this era of just like 1, 2, we got them all. We don't need to stretch this out over 5 years.
Yep. Maybe one day they'll finish the River of Tears cycle.
The Battle for Zendikar lands, unironically, that is the hill I will die on. I want them to complete that cycle so badly.
I keep forgetting that it is not finished.
As a person who brews a lot of budget decks, that is something I constantly run into. These new Virgin lands are also coming alongside the Gain lands in this set, which is going to be really awesome for Limited. This is going to be really, really sweet fixing to make sure you're able to play these 2 colors and maybe even 3 color pairs like quite easily.
Yeah, because you'll have... Are they at common?
They are, yeah.
Okay, yep. So we've got the Gain lands at common. There are some kind of like... there's an interesting land cycle at uncommon that... cares about you having mounts and vehicles, and they all make like a pilot token that saddles mounts and cruise vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. We reminded of that, very similar to the vehicle only one from the last visit to Kamigawa.
Yep. And these are all monocolored in this cycle, but they're all 2 mana to activate to get the pilot token. So even in like a 2 or 3 color deck, like that's a pretty valuable card to have in a limited environment when you've got so many saddles and mounts and vehicles.
This is a crazy card too. It's a night market. It enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters, choose a color. It taps for 1 mana of the chosen color, and it has cycling for 3. That's
really sweet.
Limited fixing gimme right there.
Yeah, that's practically as powerful as a Triumph.
Yep, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So, with multiple very strong fixing lands at common, and then maybe even you can't rely upon getting a rare land, but the Verges will come up sometimes in your draft. I could very easily see this being a 3 color, if not a 3 color limited set if you really wanted to make it work. Some very cool stuff. They also released Muruganda Raceway. They showed that off. Start your engines. It's a land with start your engines, and it taps for a colorless. And if you have max speed, it taps for 2 colorless. That's a sick design.
Yep, I thought that was cool. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So, all in all, I'm pretty excited about this set. I really have enjoyed it so far, and I look forward to seeing more and then getting my hands on it.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty interesting set. I'll be excited to play the limited aspect of it, and some of the 3 color creatures look pretty strong and like EDH viable. So I'm excited for that too. Definitely.
Well, that's all we got for Aetherdrift. They rounded up the product watch a little bit at the time of release of this show. It'll almost be Innistrad Remastered time. If you're interested in Innistrad Remastered, go and pick it up from your local game store. Good luck on opening up those serialized Edgar Markovs. I've started to see them floating around online. They are quite a pretty penny. It seems like the floor as of right now is maybe like $5,000 to $6,000 for them. So,
wow.
If maybe a little bit lower than that. Prices always go down after release. But with this kind of 500 anywhere in the world of a relatively high demand, iconic at this point, I would say, commander card. Who knows what's going to happen to the price? So, hey, if you're interested in Innistrad Remastered, it is time. Go and get those packs.
Yeah, that'll be the Saturday after this episode release.
That is correct.
Nice, yeah.
That is correct.
Good luck, everybody.
So that is all we have time for this episode. No more time for any more segments. Sorry, segment enjoyers. You get the news and you get the product watch this week. Dan, though, before we go, is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, investing in your communities now, it is much more important than ever before. Find out where people in your community need help. Apply whatever kind of help that you can give to them, and keep being good to yourself and your neighbors.
That's all we got this week. We have an excellent interview coming up, though, as always. So stick around and listen to that. Thank you. Bye-bye. Joining me this week is EK, editor of Commander at Home, editor of EDH Hijinks. You know him, ED Hijinks, you know him, you love him, or at least you know him and you love his work. You should also know him as well. Today, we are chatting about how to build better commander decks that are more interesting for you, decks that are more interesting for your opponents. We've got a lot of philosophical discussion. We have some take-home, actionable kind of stuff. It's a great interview. I know you're going to love it. Let's get right into it. And welcome back. Today, I am joined by the one, the only EK. What is up, EK? Welcome into the Horn. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, gamers. It's been a long time coming, and by a long time coming, I mean, you texted me the other day and was like, hey, what are you doing at 1:30? Because we were supposed to start at 1 o'clock. We've been shooting whatever. The breeze for like half an hour, not recording what we were supposed to, so... I'm giving you some credit here, Cal. I'm giving you some credit.
It was a couple weeks ago. I was talking to good old Murph, the co-host of my other podcast and my good friend. And he was like, wait a second, Cal. You just record all of these podcasts so you can chat with your friends, don't you? And I was like, oh, shoot, I've been figured out.
That's the secret, though. That's why you do it. That's why we make content.
It's the fun part.
It's organized friendship.
Exactly. It's just like a level up recording is like specifically with Murph, like a level up recording is like an all evening activity because we will just talk for 2 hours afterwards or whatever.
And like Jen is very well aware of that's going to be the case. You have a hall pass for the evening to go hang out and play with your friend.
Exactly. But EK, we've already yapped about this stuff for a half hour. I have not brought you on here for a social call. Technically,
yeah, this is business. I'm gonna bill you later.
Yep. I'll look forward to it, and I will send back nothing. You can send me to the collections.
I will be sent. If anything, I'm gonna be sending you something because we get to hang out for real in like 4 weeks.
Oh my gosh, I know. My plans are finally finalized. It's almost time for Chicago. Let's go. But
we're gonna be playing a lot of Commander in Chicago.
Exactly.
You like a terrible segue?
Yeah, that's what I've brought you on here to talk about today. Amongst a great many people online who brew interesting commander decks, time and again, EK is among the very few who continually impress me with just about every commander brew that he comes out with. It's a very select group of like EK and Wheeler and Dan Sheehan. So,
hey, do not knock Jim like that.
Okay, Jim too.
I'm a Jim fan, and Jim's on that Mount Rushmore, if you ask me.
Jim too. But three of those people have already been on the podcast. So it's your turn, EK.
Oh God.
So I have brought you on today to talk about building better, or perhaps more interesting, but I think building better is a snappier way to say it. Building better EDH decks. EK, what kind of philosophy do you ascribe to when it comes to sitting down, making a new EDH deck? Are you always trying to fulfill the same kind of goal at base, or are we mixing it up a little bit every time?
The easiest, like surface level way to explain it would be, I want you to play a game of Commander that you've never played before. I want this game to feel like a game that you've never experienced, and you probably will never experience ever again. Whether that's just a unique card choice, or there's cards that throw all the rules out of the window, or we're playing Rites of Flourishing and Descent to Avernus on curve and just seeing what happens. And it's not even I don't care about winning thing, because I want to win. I want to kick your ass, but I want to kick your ass my way. And my way is just going to be using Portal 3 Kingdom cards or like Saviors of Kamigawa Legends. As a subscriber to the Church of Ben Wheeler, we always put a Kamigawa card in every deck and a Portal 3 Kingdoms card in every deck.
Is that a hard and fast rule, or is it a bit of a fast rule?
Literally, like you said, how do I build a more interesting deck? I put cards from the worst sets of all time in every single deck as a hard and fast rule.
And I guess I would assume most of the time they pretty much just work pretty well regardless.
Yeah, it's not like I'm putting a Kodama's Reach in every single green deck. Like, I'm actually going and digging into the card pool. I'm using Scryfall. Like, I taught myself all the syntax and how to like segment searches and stuff like that to find that perfect card. Like, I would rather measure twice and spend 4 months making a deck than kind of regurgitate a deck every other week.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what beyond, you know, the Kamigawa rule and the Portal 3 Kingdoms
My
rule.
wallet would love me to get rid of those rules.
I was going to say, I assume a lot of those cards are pretty pricey these days.
Because I can't read simplified Chinese, so I want the English copy.
Yeah, you need the English copy, and those English copies. Hey, they've been slowly reprinting those cards. But
They will
only
not. They will not
ones.
reprint Dilu Horse, though. I guarantee you.
Me putting a Portal 3 Kingdoms card into every deck I make. Ha ha ha! Warrior's Oath.
Hey, you're following the rule. You just didn't even realize it. That is like one of the more interesting, cool cards that creates a fun dynamic at a table.
Oh, definitely. Or putting capture. I don't know what it's called. It's just time warp.
Yeah, it's just time warp. It's
cool.
Time warp for hipsters.
Guys, it's time warp, but it's cool. I swear, you can't get mad at me because it's cool. Time warp. But so you would say, how does it often come into reality that you make people play a Commander game that they've never played before? Do you see a Commander and you say, oh, I like that Commander, I'm going to do that? Do you have an idea of like an archetype or a specific card that you want to build around? How do these decks come to life? How are you doing this?
It's less mechanical and more like, hey, I'm actually going to pull from your shared life experience of being a journalist and a writer. It's about subverting expectations. So you see a Commander and you say, hey, this is the way that everyone's going to build it. What's the exact opposite of that? To quote our dear friend Benjamin Wheeler and his Hans Eriksson Walls deck that we were definitely talking about half an hour ago. You know, you look at a card like that and you would think, oh, I'm going to cheat Giant Eldrazi into play. What's the opposite of a Giant Eldrazi? A dumb
wall.
Yeah, a dumb 0/3 wall. But when you boil it down and you think about it, it's like, hey, Hans is never going to die. Like, there's cards that care about walls. There's ways to make those walls into like effective 6/6s. You just have to like take that extra little bit of time and look for that perfect card that kind of tilts things over.
So if you could give people like one tip on starting this journey, say someone has, a lot of people out there make Commander decks. A lot of people, may take precons and upgrade them. I've done a lot of that in my time. A lot of people may kind of build an EDH rec deck, which is fine. It's an easy way to make a synergistic deck that'll probably perform every time in a specific way. I, for a long time, have been a subscriber to how so many of my EDH decks come into being is I say, that Commander is pretty cool. And then my limitation is like, I can build it with whatever cards I already quite literally own. Yeah.
That is actually a really awesome way of like getting a cool deck and limiting yourself. It'll also make you feel better because less things are just going to sit on your shelf.
Dude, exactly.
Like, unironically good advice right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, seriously.
That's the advice that I've always historically given people, literally just like limit their options in one way, because as we all know, restrictions breed creativity.
I know several people who have said that over the years.
Exactly.
It's true though.
Yeah, if you can start with like even that simple restriction of like cards that I already own. Granted, I'm a long-term CDH player. If I wanted to, my list could very quickly just be like, oh, here's all my tutors, and here's a Mox Diamond, and here's all my dual lands. But that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about I'm opening up my long box of I could maybe play this in Commander cards that I have set aside, and I say, oh, that's in the right color. That seems cool.
For real, like that's where you start the conversation. I have a Saskia deck that is Moneyball Miram, because everybody hates Miram, right?
Yeah, it just does the thing. Every Miram deck is kind of the same.
So I built Miram without building Miram. So like the easiest way, or like a comfortable way of like branching out and getting out of your comfort zone would be to build your favorite deck, or build a deck that no one likes playing in a way that people want to play against it. Like that's the whole point, is like the people that you play Commander with, you want them to want to play Commander with you more, so that you have more friends and you have more social time, you have more things to do. Like, I don't know, like it seems pretty cut and dry simple. Like, we all want to play Commander, we all want to play more Magic. Like, more Magic's better than no Magic, right?
Yes, definitely. I think it might be in my mind, it's a Dan Sheehanism. I don't think it actually is, but you know, Commander is like the one game mode where the only like actual true winning game state or whatever is like getting invited back to play the next game.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's not a Dan Sheehanism, but I like just like ascribe it with Commander Sphere related. You know, Dan Sheehan.
I think
Rachel,
it's a Sheldonism, actually.
That sounds like a Sheldonism. Yeah, there you go.
Dan and Rachel were both big proponents of little ages, or like added. Wow, words. We're gonna cut
little
this.
Ageisms.
Yeah,
Look, Dan
and Rachel were huge on little tidbits like that, and just little like things that you could latch onto. These little sage like Sun Tzu-esque mnemonics or what have you.
Yeah,
and that's definitely like a Sheldon thing. Yep. There's also no Commander is better than bad Commander, and I think a lot of bad Commander boils down to like people just, I don't even want to say not getting it, but like taking things too far. Building interesting casual decks is definitely an exercise in exercising restraint and discipline, because it's really easy to just add all of your tutors, or it's like, hey, I want to do this very one specific thing
and over again,
and yeah, that one very specific thing over and over again it might be cool, it might be interesting, but when it happens every single time, it kind of loses the novelty, and you get diminishing returns every time you play a deck. Like, I want to build a deck that I constantly want to reach for, not the second I do the thing, the next time I shuffle up the deck and I do it, it's less satisfying. I want it to feel satisfying every single time. Like, here's a really relevant good example: the new Captain America with like the throw and catch. Yeah, it'd be really, really fun to like throw and catch Sword of Eden with like lifelink and Death Touch and Toralf and like all this kind of crazy stuff. But once you do it once, you've
done it.
Yeah, you've done it. I don't want a deck to feel that way. I want it to feel fresh. I want it to feel unique every single time. And part of that might be I might not get to do it every single time. Like, it's a cool, novel, like, spectacle of a thing if it happens. The will they, won't they of it happening or not happening in a Commander deck or in a game of Commander is interesting to me. I find that fascinating. Like, I find it fascinating that this deck might not work, so that when it does, it's all the more satisfying, and you're chasing that little bit of dopamine every single time you shuffle up that deck because you want that cool thing to happen. So like, yeah, you could build a deck built around a build around enchantment like Wild Pair and play Academy Rector, but then it's going to happen every single time. Where's the fun in that? And that's like, I'm not diminishing that. That's not fun. And there's people who are going to build a deck and they're going to want it to happen every single time. And that's not discounting that opinion. That opinion's super valid. Like, I think there's a time and place for that. And it just depends on what like part of the ambiguous gray area of casual you're trying to play in and your play group. Because there are play groups that love consistency. There's play groups that love playing crunchy, like super tight.
CDH exists, right?
Yeah. CDH exists. There's high power, mega optimized casual that like trends on fringe CEDH. Like, I was playing Primal Surge in CDH. Like, you can play those like super, super focused, like optimized casual decks at a very high level. And it's up to you to just decide where you want to be on that sliding scale. But I found, especially nowadays, I find myself getting lower and lower and lower. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to just include a whole bunch of chaff and trash in my deck. Like, I want it to work. Sometimes you got to play good cards to make the bad cards.
For sure. To do anything at all.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was actually having a conversation before we got on this call with a friend about Canadian Highlander, and I promise this isn't a tangent, but there's a lot of niche archetypes in Canlander, in Commander, that you can make better because of good cards. Like, you can play, a weird kind of funky energy deck with these 4 and 5 drops, but because you have Moxen, they suddenly look a lot better. You can play, I don't know, well, you can't say mirrors anymore because what's their name? The 5-color mirror guy exists now.
I don't even remember his name, but I know what you're talking about.
You can play some niche archetype like Scarecrows nowadays because Maskwood Nexus exists. Conspiracy has always existed. Like, you can play a lot of these niche archetypes that don't have a lot of support by playing some of these other supportive cards. And yeah, you're kind of pulling slots away from your deck, but we were already kind of doing that anyways. Like, I think it's pretty eye-opening to think of a Commander deck as not a 100 card deck. It's really like 50 cards.
Yeah, because I mean, there's some level of stuff. There's nothing you quote unquote have to play, but some of what you have to play is like, yeah, you have to have at least like 32 lanes.
It doesn't have to be some crazy, elaborate, wild thing. It pays to just start simple, and as you kind of dip your toe in that pool, you'll find a more complex way of approaching it by saying, hey, I hate this commander. Everybody hates this commander. But what if I built it so that people didn't hate it?
What if I built it to be cool? What if it was a cool commander?
Yeah. Like, what if I built Miram, but without the blue? And I played black instead. Like, how does that work? Like, as I would put it, Moneyball Miram. We can't re-sign Giambi, but we can rebuild him in the aggregate. Like, you'll eventually kind of get to that point where, like, maybe that interests you. But there's definitely like a sliding scale of ways to engage with doing something more interesting. It just boils down to what is interesting to you. Like, what are you more comfortable doing? Like, in some cases, what do you have the financial ability to do?
Yes,
like,
it's definitely a big part of it too.
Yeah, it's definitely not for a new player per se. It's definitely something that I'm fortunate to be able to do, where like I have the disposable income to buy some P3K cards every once in a while, or I have the ability to get an OG Kiki Jiki foil, or like, I don't know. Like the different Myojins in original foil, like those are interesting to me. I think another like super tangible thing to look at is give cards a second read, because on second read you might latch on to something that you didn't on that first read. Whether that's where the punctuation is, and where the punctuation being changes how a rules interaction might be, or it changes your interpretation of how an effect works, or how an effect might play out in practice. I think taking that extra second to read is actually a very easy like way for even a new player to approach doing something more interestingly. It involves having a depth of knowledge of how the game works, but that is something that you can build a lot quicker than a collection, because that's just getting reps in with the same deck over and over and over again. You might just say, hey, like, I saw this and I realized, like, hey, because of how this ability works, this card that I've never heard of completely changes my worldview. Like, just getting reps in and playing Magic, goes a long way in reinterpreting your relationship and how you kind of, I don't want to use interpret for the second time in the same sentence, because that's lazy grammar, but like it changes how you interpret things over time.
It works.
Yeah,
it works.
Like my favorite commander ever is Saskia, although that is rapidly changed to Dis of the Rest list. But Saskia has a particular wording where the creature is the one doing the splash damage, not Saskia. So on first glance, it doesn't look like that it would pick up on keywords like having lifelink or infect or double damage or anything like that. So because of that, you kind of change your relationship with like, oh, I get double lifelink, or oh, hey, if I have a damage doubler in play, I do double damage on combat damage, but when Saskia makes me do the splash damage, that double damage doubles again. And it's little things like that you have to read it a second time to kind of pick up on. And it goes a long way, and that's a very simple thing that can go a long way. Yeah,
and because you figured that out, you're rewarded with so many options for more cards that you can play in that deck that you maybe wouldn't have played otherwise.
Or in some cases, an entirely new deck, which is also a hope. Like a lot of people will say like, oh, I'm really, really inspired by Rachel's decks, which I am. We all should be. Rachel's the best. I think the best idealistic inspiration is getting inspired by yourself and being impressed with yourself every once in a while and giving yourself some credit.
Oh, I am so impressed by myself.
And yeah, like not to feed our egos or anything like that, but like that there's a certain satisfaction of saying like, hey, I'm actually better at this than I thought I was, or hey, I'm actually a lot more creative and clever than I thought I was. And I think that's a really good stepping stone to like having some longevity in this hobby and some like long-term enthusiasm that'll keep you coming back. Because there's a lot more homework and a lot more just like sitting in your office or sitting in your bedroom on the floor going through cards than people like to admit sometimes. The amount of work that goes into like making 4 decks for a recorded like EDH gameplay video is unreal. Like an entire afternoon of research and development goes into every single game that you see on every single channel, most likely.
It's like that, like it takes an afternoon to sit down and conceptualize the better part of a deck. It takes an afternoon to go, even if you're just working with cards that you maybe already own or whatever, or idealistically doing that. Yeah. It takes an afternoon to then dig through all of your cards 100%. And find the cards you need. And then it takes another 25 minutes to sleeve them up and make sure they're all ready to go. And then you got to double check that the list you have online, if you're anal about this kind of stuff like I am, you got to look at your list online and make sure it matches what you actually have in the paper cards in front of you. And auditing that can take forever. And
yeah, I think the simple moral here is like, have some patience with yourself. It's not going to happen overnight. There's like little things that you can get into and latch onto right away, but even those take time. So having patience with yourself really, really goes a long way. And having patience with your play group as well. Like if you and your friend group, like, you know, especially since your like at home friend group is newer players and, you know, they're trying to like up their game a little bit, having patience with the other people around you goes a long way. And I think that's just like generally good life advice anyways. But I think it's especially so here where, you know, we're like terminally online whales who engage with Magic all day, every day. And in a
very unique way.
And even then it still takes us a while to like process through all of this and conceptualize all of this. Like we even have to be patient with ourselves.
Yes, definitely.
No matter, you know, even with how engaged we are.
Yep, definitely. So, EK, we're running a little low on time. So, before we go, I know Dina is your new baby. or newer baby, newest baby, favorite baby.
She's
Dissa,
the artist proof deck at this point. You know what? Let's just go with what our good pal Cameron calls her. It's Tarmogoyf Timna.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf Timna. What can you walk me at a high level through some of the steps you have taken to make that deck into a reality along the way?
Money.
Well, sans the you spending a lot of money part.
Yeah. I mean, I've sold cards and built a collection over years. But for real, yeah, I think actually Saskia is a really, really good example here.
Yep.
I had
a Miram you kept referencing over and over again.
Yeah, I had a Miram deck back in the day, and I loved playing with it. Nobody liked playing against it. So I wanted to change the relationship with how I kind of viewed that, and I still wanted to be able to play that deck, but I didn't want people to be miserable playing against it. So I tried to figure out a way that I could play that deck without actually playing that deck, and that was to completely switch the commander and to take that commander and build it in a way that you never would have thought of or have ever seen before. So, like, no one would ever think of playing Saskia clones. And, like, you can do it. Like, there's a lot of red, like, make a copy of a thing. It exiles at the end, the end of the turn. But there's also white and green populate effects. Like, it's just this kind of mental gymnastics of, if I do this, then I can do this. If I want to do this, I can do that. Like, hey, here's a 1-to-1 equivalent of this, like, crucial Miram card, or here's my quote unquote Miram in that deck. And it was very much a process of discovery and trial and error. Like, the first time I played that deck, it was absolutely awful.
Sure.
I think I had one dragon in play by the end of the game, period. So, again, patience with ourselves. Like, yeah, that interesting deck might not work the first time, but if you really, really want to see it through and you really vibe with the concept enough, you'll put in the work to turn it into something that, like, I love playing. It certainly helps that I have a super, like, blatantly illegal playtest card in that deck. But getting a Brian Kibler Dogron Master, like, reinvigorated my love for that deck over the last year. It's like it changed how I thought of every single card in that deck. So even then, it's an ongoing process of finding these cool kind of new cards to work with. But yeah, it really just boiled down to, my friends hate playing against this deck. I love playing against this deck. How can I find a way to still play this deck?
How can we cross those streams?
And I swear to God, there was like a solid 2 months where that's the only deck that they wanted to play against because they loved it that much.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you say, oh, this is Miram, but you'll actually like it, there's a bit of trust that goes into it with an unknown kind of play grip. But if you say, oh, this is my Saskia Dragons deck, and then they, like, kind of,
oh, interesting.
Oh, wait a second, is this just Miram? And, like,
no,
like we said, and to kind of tie a bow on it, like we said at the top of the show, it subverts the expectations. And the process of building that deck was, how can I subvert expectations at every possible moment?
And then you accomplish your goal, and you've had a very fun time playing it ever since.
I do not get to play that deck enough because I want to play all the other decks, because I love every single one of my decks.
What?
That's the goal, right? Like, that's why we build decks. We build decks because we want to play them, and we want to play them.
How often do you take decks apart? As one final question, if the goal is to love all of them all of the time, do you ever have to?
Oh yeah,
rip them apart.
I mean, we're how many weeks out from Chicago right now? Like, literally a month away to the day. And one of the decks that I was super sure that I was going to bring for the weekend, I'm pretty sure I'm going to take it apart, like, later this week.
Sure, yeah.
Just because I haven't picked it up in a while, and if the guiding principle is I want to play my decks, I haven't wanted to play it in a minute. just hasn't enthused me. Even though it's got like the jankest, weirdest, wildest cards out of any of my decks, it's just haven't wanted to play it.
That's the part I'm at with like a lot of my EDH decks these days. There's a whole pile of them that I just haven't felt the need or want to play in a really long time. Predictably, most of them kind of fall in that like 30 card upgrade pre-con zone, but it's the fact of the matter is just like I just haven't taken the time to take them apart.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to precons, I would rather just buy the single of the face commander and then do the whole 99 custom and do and push myself to do my own thing. And that's not always feasible, but I find it's a lot more of a fun, engaging way for me to engage with those commanders in particular, where there's a predetermined roadmap with them. And I'm gonna try and subvert it all the way through. But every Thanksgiving weekend, because like even the last few, like we released an episode on Thursday, like it's Black Friday or cold outside and kind of sucks, and no one wants to travel or go anywhere that Friday. I will sit and in very Dan Sheehan fashion, I will burn it all down. I will actually even if I'm gonna keep a deck together through the end of this, I will take a deck apart, unsleeve it, put it back in my box,
and then if you really are thinking about it, you'll put it back together at a later
date. Like it's not only an audit of and a vibe check of all of my decks then and there, it's also me auditing like what do I want to do, like how do I feel about these kinds of things. And it's very, very ritualistic. I'll put on a Robin Williams movie in the background and just kind of hang out and go through boxes. And I might rebuild the Naya Landfall deck, but it might not be Hazazen. It might be Yuma, and that might look a little bit differently than it otherwise
feel
would be.
A little different. Yeah.
But I'll take everything completely apart, and then if I want to put it back together, I put it back together. And it's the first thing. It might be the first thing that happens, but it's the physical act of taking it apart and saying, do you want to commit to putting it back together? That kind of goes a long way and reaffirms a relationship with the deck.
I like that a lot. Well, EK, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Herald's Horn. As always, is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners with before we go?
I'm excited to see any and all of you guys in Chicago in 4 short weeks.
I can't believe it's nearly time. Holy.
Yeah. I could plug my job, but a lot of your listeners are already fans of Commander at Home and Elder Dragon Hijinks and all of these other YouTube Commander shows. So just like go leave a comment and like and subscribe to all of them. It really does make a difference, especially nowadays with these algorithms just all over the place. Even that like extra act of hitting the button once goes a long way. So support your local content creator.
Thank you so much for coming on, EK. Goodbye. Thank you so much for listening. If you have feedback, would like to sponsor us, or would like to submit something to the Letters to the Editor segment, email me at editorial@heraldshorn.com. The show is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Cal Jones. The rest of the team is, of course, our co-hosts, Emma Partlow, Dan, better known as Moderately Anonymous MTG, and Lexi, better known as Black Girl Mage. We're having so much fun making this show. I hope you're enjoying listening to it. We'll see you next week.